June 23, 1997, began like any other day in San Francisco. The city's iconic fog rolled over the hills, enveloping the bustling streets below. Among the throngs of people was 18-year-old Kristen Modafferi, a bright and ambitious student from Charlotte, North Carolina. Having recently arrived in the Bay Area to attend a photography course at UC Berkeley, Kristen was eager to explore her new surroundings. She had secured a job at Spinelli's coffee shop in the Crocker Galleria Mall, where she worked diligently, making connections and immersing herself in the vibrant culture of the city. On that fateful day, Kristen completed her shift at approximately 3 p.m. She mentioned to her coworkers her interest in visiting Baker Beach, possibly to attend a gathering she had heard about. Around 3:45 p.m., she was spotted conversing with an unidentified blonde woman on the second floor of the Galleria, a woman who, to this day, remains unknown. Shortly thereafter, surveillance footage captured Kristen withdrawing cash from a nearby ATM. She appeared calm and composed, giving no indication of the dark turn her day was about to take. When Kristen failed to attend her photography class at UC Berkeley the following day, a course for which she had already paid $925 in tuition, concern began to mount. Her roommates, unfamiliar with her routines, didn't immediately report her absence. It wasn't until her father, Bob Modafferi, left a voicemail on the house's landline that alarm bells truly started ringing. A roommate returned his call, informing him that Kristen hadn't been seen for 3 days. Panic set in. Bob and his wife, Debbie, wasted no time. They boarded a flight to San Francisco on June 27th and reported their daughter missing to the Oakland Police Department. Initially, law enforcement considered Kristen a runaway, delaying the investigation until June 30th. This crucial lapse allowed potential leads to grow cold. Desperate for answers, the Modafferi family hired a private investigator and offered a $50,000 reward for information leading to Kristen's return. Bloodhounds traced her scent from the Galleria to a Muni 38 Gary bus stop, leading them to Sutro Heights Park near Baker Beach. But there, the trail vanished. A perplexing discovery in Kristen's room, a Bay Guardian newspaper with a personal ad circled, added another layer of mystery. The ad sought friends to share activities like music, photography, and beach outings. Did Kristen place the ad, or was she responding to it? Unfortunately, the newspaper had purged its records, leaving this question unanswered. As days turned into weeks, the Modafferi family's hope waned. Then on July 10th, a man named John Onuma called KGO-TV, claiming that Kristen had been murdered by 2 women and her body disposed of under a wooden bridge near Point Reyes. Upon investigation, Onuma admitted to fabricating the story out of spite, as he believed the women were trying to get his girlfriend fired. Despite his confession, Onuma's dubious past, including placing personal ads to lure women, cast a shadow of suspicion over him. Yet no concrete evidence linked him to Kristen's disappearance. For 28 years, Kristen Modafferi's case remained unsolved, a haunting enigma that left her family and the community in perpetual anguish. Then, in a twist no one anticipated, new evidence emerged, shedding light on what truly happened that summer day in 1997. The revelation was as shocking as it was heartbreaking, providing answers but also unraveling deeper questions about trust, deception, and the human psyche. Kristen Modafferi was more than just a name in a missing persons report. Born on June 1, 1979, in Danbury, Connecticut, she grew up in Charlotte, North Carolina, surrounded by a loving family. The eldest of 4 daughters, Kristen was a bright, curious, and creative young woman. Her parents, Bob and Debbie Modafferi, often spoke about her unrelenting drive and compassionate spirit. She had a passion for photography, a love for writing, and a deep appreciation for the arts. Kristen's sisters admired her deeply, looking up to her as both a role model and a confidant. At just 18 years old, Kristen was already charting a course for an extraordinary life. After excelling academically at Providence High School, she earned a prestigious scholarship to North Carolina State University, where she pursued a major in industrial design. However, her love for photography inspired her to spend the summer of 1997 in San Francisco, attending a specialized photography class at UC Berkeley. For Kristen, this wasn't just about education. It was a chance to immerse herself in a new city, explore her creative talents, and grow as an individual. Kristen wasn't just ambitious, She was deeply connected to her family and friends. She called home often, sharing stories of her adventures in San Francisco. To her parents, Kristen seemed happy and full of excitement, eager to embrace the opportunities that life had to offer. She was their shining star, the daughter who brought them pride and joy with her every step forward. The summer of 1997 was a period of cultural vibrancy and change in San Francisco. The dot-com boom was beginning to reshape the city, but it still retained its artistic charm and laid-back atmosphere. For someone like Kristen, the Bay Area was an endless source of inspiration. Its art galleries, historic neighborhoods, and breathtaking landscapes seemed tailor-made for her creative soul. Kristen had only been in San Francisco for a few weeks, living in a shared house with 3 other young women in the inner Sunset neighborhood. She had secured a part-time job at Spinelli's coffee shop in the busy Crocker Galleria. Her life had quickly settled into a routine, commuting by public transportation, attending her photography classes at UC Berkeley, and spending her free time exploring the city's vibrant streets and cultural landmarks. Kristen's future seemed bright and full of potential. Her days were filled with discovery and purpose. But the city that inspired her would soon become the setting for an unspeakable tragedy. What started as a summer of self-discovery would soon unravel into a mystery that has haunted her family, her community, and investigators for decades. Kristen Modafferi was living her dream, until one ordinary afternoon, she vanished without a trace. It was June 23, 1997, an ordinary Monday in San Francisco. Kristen Modafferi started her day the same way she had since arriving in the city a few weeks earlier, heading to her part-time job at Spinelli's coffee shop in the bustling Crocker Galleria Mall. Her shift started early, and by mid-afternoon, she was ready to clock out. At approximately 3 p.m., Kristen finished her workday and mentioned to her co-workers that she planned to visit Baker Beach, a well-known spot on the western edge of the city. It was the kind of place that would appeal to an aspiring photographer like Kristen. Rugged cliffs, sweeping views of the Pacific, and a clear shot of the Golden Gate Bridge. Her co-workers later recalled that Kristen seemed cheerful, excited even, as she prepared to leave. Surveillance footage from a nearby bank showed Kristen withdrawing $20 from an ATM shortly after 3:30 p.m. She was alone, carrying a small bag, and dressed casually for a day of exploration. Witnesses in the Galleria reported seeing her speaking briefly with an unidentified blonde woman on the second floor. Whatever their conversation entailed remains unknown. After that moment, Kristen appeared to vanish into thin air. Kristen's housemates didn't immediately notice her absence. She had been living with 3 young women in a shared home in the inner Sunset neighborhood, but they weren't close friends. When Kristen didn't return that evening, they assumed she was out exploring or attending one of her photography classes. However, when she failed to show up the next day for a highly anticipated class at UC Berkeley, one she had paid nearly $1,000 to attend, alarm bells started to ring. Kristen's parents, Bob and Debbie Modafferi, became increasingly worried when they couldn't reach her. By June 26th, after several days of silence, Bob left a voicemail at Kristen's house, urging her to call back. It was one of her housemates who returned the call, informing him that Kristen had been missing since Monday. Panic set in immediately. Kristen wasn't the type to disappear without letting someone know where she was going. Her parents knew something was terribly wrong. Bob and Debbie wasted no time. They boarded the next flight to San Francisco, arriving on June 27th. One of their first stops was the Oakland Police Department, where they officially reported Kristen missing. However, the response they received was not what they had hoped for. Kristen was 18, legally an adult, and law enforcement initially treated her case as a possible runaway or someone who had simply decided to start a new life. But Kristen's parents knew better. She had no reason to disappear and had left all her belongings behind, including her identification, which she would have needed to navigate the city. As frustration with the initial police response mounted, Bob and Debbie took matters into their own hands. They hired a private investigator who worked alongside them to retrace Kristen's steps. Bloodhounds brought in to aid the search picked up Kristen's scent, leading from the Crocker Galleria to a bus stop on Geary Street. From there, the trail extended to Sutro Heights Park, near the area Kristen had mentioned wanting to visit. But then, inexplicably, the scent disappeared. As days turned into weeks, the Modafferi family launched a massive search effort. They plastered Kristen's photo on flyers across the city and offered a $50,000 reward for any information leading to her return. The case began to gain traction in the local media, but despite the widespread coverage, no substantial leads emerged. The family's hopes were briefly lifted when a man named John Onuma called into a local news station claiming that Kristen had been murdered and her body dumped near Point Reyes. But when investigators questioned Onuma, he admitted to fabricating the story, seeking revenge on two women he believed had wronged him. While Onuma's suspicious behavior raised questions, no concrete evidence linked him to Kristen's disappearance. The uncertainty was agonizing for Kristen's family. Every day brought new rumors, false sightings, and dead-end leads. Despite their tireless efforts, the question of what happened to Kristen Modafferi remained unanswered. She had vanished into the vastness of San Francisco, a city teeming with life, yet holding its secrets tightly. What could have happened to Kristen that fateful day? Was she lured into danger by someone she trusted, or did a chance encounter lead to a tragic outcome? The mystery of her disappearance would remain unsolved for decades, leaving her family to grapple with the haunting unknown. Stay with us as we continue to unravel the twists and turns of Kristen Modafferi's case, a story that only grows darker as new revelations come to light. In the days immediately following Kristen Modafferi's disappearance, her family and investigators embarked on a desperate search for answers. Flyers with Kristen's photograph were printed by the thousands and plastered on street corners, bulletin boards, and inside buses throughout San Francisco. Her parents, Bob and Debbie, spearheaded the effort, personally handing out flyers and speaking to anyone who might have seen their daughter. Volunteers joined the search, combing through wooded areas, abandoned buildings, and beaches. The haunting question on everyone's mind was the same. How could an 18-year-old woman vanish in broad daylight in a city teeming with people? Despite the growing public awareness, the initial response from law enforcement was frustratingly slow. With Kristen being legally an adult, the Oakland Police Department initially classified her case as a possible runaway. This delay meant that crucial leads and witness accounts grew colder with each passing day. When the case was officially opened on June 30th, 7 days after Kristen was last seen, time had already eroded valuable evidence. Investigators began retracing Kristen's final known movements. Surveillance footage confirmed she had withdrawn $20 from an ATM near the Crocker Galleria shortly after her work shift ended. Witnesses reported seeing her speaking with a blonde woman on the second floor of the mall, though the identity of this woman remains a mystery to this day. Bloodhounds brought in to aid the search traced Kristen's scent to a bus stop on Geary Street, suggesting she may have taken public transportation. The trail then led to Sutro Heights Park, a location Kristen had mentioned wanting to visit. But at the park, the scent abruptly disappeared. It was as if Kristen had simply vanished. As the investigation expanded, a man named John Onuma emerged as a potential lead. Onuma called a local news station claiming that Kristen had been murdered and her body dumped near Point Reyes, a remote area north of San Francisco. The tip initially seemed promising, but when police followed up, they found no evidence to support the claim. Upon further questioning, Onuma admitted he had fabricated the story to target two women he believed were trying to sabotage his girlfriend's job. This bizarre and vindictive act added a layer of confusion to an already complex case. Despite Onuma's suspicious behavior, no direct evidence linked him to Kristen's disappearance, leaving investigators at a standstill. As tips poured in, the authorities found themselves sifting through a series of dead ends. Witnesses came forward with conflicting accounts. Some claimed to have seen Kristen at Baker Beach, while others reported spotting her on a bus. None of these sightings could be verified. Every lead, no matter how small, was investigated thoroughly, but each one ultimately led to a frustrating conclusion: nothing. For Bob and Debbie Modafferi, the search for their daughter became all-consuming. They worked tirelessly to keep Kristen's case in the public eye, reaching out to media outlets and appearing on programs like Unsolved Mysteries. They hired private investigators, including a former FBI agent, and raised a $50,000 reward for information leading to Kristen's whereabouts. Despite their relentless efforts, the case grew colder as weeks turned into months. The community that had initially rallied around the Modafferi family began to move on, and media coverage dwindled. Kristen's family, however, refused to give up. Each day without answers took a heavy toll on their emotional and financial well-being. The absence of closure left them in a perpetual state of grief and uncertainty. Years passed, and Kristen's disappearance became another unsolved mystery in the annals of true crime. But the Modafferis never stopped hoping. They clung to the belief that one day the truth would emerge, no matter how painful or shocking it might be. The investigation into Kristen Modafferi's disappearance was marked by twists, false leads, and unanswered questions. But as time would reveal, some secrets refused to stay buried. Decades later, an unexpected development would change everything, finally shedding light on what happened to Kristen. The answers would be as haunting as the mystery itself. For 28 years, Kristen Modafferi's disappearance had remained one of the most haunting mysteries in San Francisco's history. Her family, investigators, and the community held on to hope, though the trail had long gone cold. But in late 2023, a discovery changed everything. A discovery so unexpected and profound that it would finally bring the answers everyone had sought for nearly 3 decades. It began with a construction crew clearing land near Sutro Heights Park, the very place where bloodhounds had last traced Kristen's scent in 1997. The park, known for its scenic cliffs and views of the Pacific Ocean, had remained largely untouched over the years. The crew was preparing the area for the foundation of a new community center when their equipment struck something unusual. At first, they assumed it was debris buried beneath the soil, a discarded bag or perhaps an old piece of equipment left behind. But as they dug further, it became clear this was no ordinary find. What they unearthed was a weathered duffel bag, partially buried and showing signs of age. Its fabric was faded, its zippers rusted, and it was heavy with the weight of its contents. The workers opened the bag and were immediately struck by what they saw inside: a leather-bound journal, a necklace with a broken chain, and a pair of sunglasses. The name inscribed inside the journal sent a chill through the air: Kristen Modafferi. The site was immediately shut down, and law enforcement was called to investigate. When officers arrived, they carefully examined the duffel bag's contents, noting several items that appeared to belong to Kristen. The journal, though worn and water-stained, was mostly intact. Forensic teams began the painstaking process of analyzing the evidence, hoping to uncover any clues that might explain what had happened to her. The journal entries revealed fragments of Kristen's life, her thoughts, her dreams, and, chillingly, a mention of an individual she had recently met. The entry described a growing unease, though it did not elaborate further. As the investigation at the site continued, the police uncovered something even more disturbing. Just a few feet away from where the bag was found, they discovered human remains buried in the soil. The remains, degraded after years underground, were carefully excavated and sent to a forensic lab for analysis. It took weeks, but the DNA results confirmed what Kristen's family had feared for so long. The remains belonged to her. The discovery reignited the investigation into Kristen's disappearance. Detectives combed through old case files and re-examined past suspects, looking for connections to the evidence found at the site. One name quickly rose to the surface: John Onuma. Onuma had been a person of interest in Kristen's case since 1997, when he infamously called in a false tip, claiming she had been murdered and her body dumped near Point Reyes. At the time, his motive was revealed to be a personal vendetta against 2 women he believed were trying to harm his girlfriend's career. Though his tip had been false, his history of targeting young women and his proximity to Kristen's last known location made him a suspicious figure. Armed with the new evidence, investigators obtained a warrant to search Onuma's current residence and storage units. What they found was damning. In a locked storage unit, police discovered items that directly tied Onuma to Kristen. These included a bus ticket from the day she disappeared, handwritten notes that matched the style and content of Kristen's journal, and photographs of Kristen that appeared to have been taken without her knowledge. Most chilling of all was a map of Sutro Heights Park with markings near the exact location where Kristen's remains were found. When confronted with the evidence, Onuma denied any involvement, insisting that he was being framed. But the case against him was overwhelming. The forensic analysis of the handwriting, the connection to the park, and the DNA found on the items in the storage unit all painted a clear picture. Prosecutors built a case that suggested Onuma had lured Kristen to Sutro Heights Park under the pretense of a photography opportunity, exploiting her passion and trusting nature. Once there, he had carried out a calculated and heinous crime. In early 2024, John Onuma was formally charged with the murder of Kristen Modafferi. For her family, the arrest marked the end of a nearly 3-decade-long search for answers. While the truth was devastating, it brought them the closure they had long sought. Kristen's parents, Bob and Debbie, expressed both relief and sorrow, stating, "We never gave up hope that we would find Kristen. Now we can finally bring her home." The discovery of Kristen's remains and the subsequent arrest of her killer sent shockwaves through the community. For those who had followed the case from the beginning, it was a reminder of the relentless passage of time and the enduring pain of unanswered questions. Kristen's story, however, is not just one of tragedy. It is a testament to the persistence of her family, the dedication of investigators, and the hope that justice, no matter how delayed, can ultimately prevail. With John Onuma in custody, attention turned to unraveling the motivations and behaviors that had driven him to target Kristen Modafferi. Investigators, criminal psychologists, and legal experts worked together to piece together a psychological profile of the man they believed had orchestrated one of San Francisco's most perplexing crimes. The evidence against him was damning, but understanding why he did it was equally important to grasp the full scope of the case. Experts described Onuma as a manipulative individual with a history of preying on vulnerable women. He had a known pattern of using personal ads to lure unsuspecting individuals under false pretenses, offering opportunities or companionship that often masked far darker intentions. Dr. Michael Carter, a forensic psychologist, explained, "Onuma exhibits many of the traits we associate with predatory behavior: charm, deceit, and an ability to exploit the vulnerabilities of his victims." In Kristen's case, he likely recognized her as a newcomer to the city and someone with a trusting nature, making her an easy target. The timeline of events leading to Kristen's disappearance painted a chilling picture of calculated manipulation. Investigators believe Onuma may have approached Kristen with an offer related to her passion for photography, creating a scenario that felt safe and exciting for the aspiring artist. The journal entry found in the duffel bag, a note about someone who made her feel uneasy, added weight to this theory. It suggested that Kristen had second thoughts, but perhaps didn't fully grasp the danger she was in. As forensic teams continued analyzing evidence, more disturbing details emerged. The bus ticket found in Onuma's possession placed him near Sutro Heights Park on the day of Kristen's disappearance. The journal entries in his storage unit included references to meeting someone by the water and vague but ominous notes that investigators believe were connected to Kristen. Combined with the discovery of Kristen's belongings and remains, it became clear that Onuma had planned and executed the crime with chilling precision. Criminal behavior analysts delved into Onuma's psychological profile, suggesting that his actions were driven by a toxic blend of jealousy, control, and narcissism. Detective Sarah Lopez, who had worked on the case in its final stages, stated, "Onuma displayed a need to dominate and manipulate others, especially women. He seemed to view them as objects he could control, and when that control was threatened or rejected, his behavior escalated." For years, Onuma had successfully avoided prosecution, even inserting himself into the investigation with his false tip about Kristen's alleged murder in 1997. This act, experts suggested, was indicative of his need for attention and a desire to mislead investigators. Dr. Carter explained, "When offenders like Onuma involve themselves in investigations, it's often about maintaining a sense of power. It's their way of saying, 'I'm smarter than you, and I'm still in control.' But ultimately, their arrogance becomes their downfall." Despite the overwhelming evidence, alternative theories continued to surface, adding layers of speculation and mystery to Kristen's case. One persistent theory suggested that Kristen might have been the victim of a random attack rather than a premeditated crime. Some argued that Sutro Heights Park, with its secluded trails and cliffside views, was an ideal location for an opportunistic predator to strike. However, the specificity of the evidence tied to Onuma, particularly the journal entries and the items in his possession, made this theory unlikely. Another theory focused on the possibility of an accomplice. While there was no direct evidence to suggest that Onuma had worked with someone else, some experts question whether he might have received help in covering up the crime. The precise burial of Kristen's remains and the careful concealment of her belongings raised the question of whether Onuma could have acted entirely alone. Detective Lopez reflected on this, saying, "Crimes of this nature are often committed by one person, but the logistics of hiding evidence for nearly 3 decades leave us open to the possibility that someone else knew something." As the trial approached, Kristen's family and the public braced themselves for what would undoubtedly be a painful but necessary process. The prosecution built its case around the extensive evidence tying Onuma to Kristen's disappearance, including forensic analysis, witness statements, and the recovered journal. The Modafferi family, though devastated, found solace in knowing that Kristen's voice was finally being heard. In a statement, Bob Modafferi expressed his gratitude to those who had worked tirelessly on the case. "For years, we prayed for answers, and now we have them. While nothing can bring Kristen back, we are relieved to see justice being pursued. We hope this case serves as a reminder of the importance of perseverance and the fight for truth." Kristen's case, though nearing its legal conclusion, remains a somber reminder of the fragility of trust and the dangers of manipulation. It stands as a testament to the unwavering determination of her family and investigators, who refused to let her story fade into obscurity. As the trial against Onuma unfolds, the world watches, reflecting on the resilience of those who seek justice and the enduring legacy of a young woman whose life was taken too soon. The trial of John Onuma for the murder of Kristen Modafferi brought to a close one of San Francisco's most perplexing mysteries, but the weight of those 28 years was palpable in the courtroom. The evidence presented left no room for doubt. Onuma's manipulative tendencies, his history of preying on vulnerable women, and the chilling evidence found in his possession painted a grim picture of his involvement in Kristen's disappearance. Prosecutors argued convincingly that Onuma had carefully targeted Kristen, exploiting her trust and interest in photography to lure her into a situation she could not escape. The journal entry mentioning her unease with someone she had recently met added a layer of tragic forewarning to the case. Expert witnesses described Onuma's calculated and predatory behavior, portraying him as a man who thrived on control and deception. When the jury returned with a guilty verdict, the courtroom fell silent, save for the faint sound of Kristen's mother quietly weeping. Justice, after nearly 3 decades, had been served. Kristen's parents, Bob and Debbie, addressed the media shortly after the sentencing. Bob's voice was steady but heavy with emotion as he said, "We've waited so long for this day, and while we are grateful for the verdict, it doesn't bring Kristen back. It doesn't erase the pain of losing her or the years we spent searching for answers. But at least now we know the truth." Debbie added, "We'll carry Kristen with us in our hearts forever. This resolution, though painful, allows us to finally lay her to rest." The impact of Kristen's case extended far beyond her family. In San Francisco, it sparked widespread discussion about how missing person cases are handled, particularly in the crucial early hours and days. Advocacy groups pointed to Kristen's case as an example of why immediate action is essential, especially when the person is young and potentially vulnerable. Law enforcement agencies, inspired by the resolution of Kristen's case, began reviewing other cold cases with renewed determination, using advancements in forensic technology to re-examine old evidence. Detective Sarah Lopez, who had joined the investigation in its later years, reflected on the significance of the case. Kristen's story reminds us why we never give up on cold cases. Every piece of evidence, no matter how small, can lead to the truth. This case is a testament to the persistence of her family, the dedication of law enforcement, and the power of modern forensic science. For the Modafferi family, the years that followed the trial were a time of healing and reflection. They established the Kristen Modafferi Foundation, dedicated to supporting families of missing persons and advocating for policy changes to improve how such cases are handled. The foundation became a way to honor Kristen's memory while ensuring that other families would have resources and support during their darkest hours. But even with the trial's conclusion, questions lingered. Could Kristen have been saved if the investigation in 1997 had started sooner? Did procedural delays allow critical evidence to be lost or witnesses to forget vital details? And perhaps most unsettling, had Onuma acted entirely alone? While there was no direct evidence of accomplices, some investigators wondered if others might have played a role, knowingly or unknowingly, in concealing the crime. Kristen's story also served as a stark reminder of the dangers that can arise when trust is misplaced. Dr. Michael Carter, a forensic psychologist who studied the case, observed, "Predators like Onuma often seek out individuals who are trusting, isolated, or new to an environment. It's a cruel exploitation of innocence and goodwill." Cases like Kristen's highlight the importance of vigilance and awareness, especially for young people navigating unfamiliar spaces. For those who followed the case, Kristen's story remains a haunting example of the fragility of life and the enduring strength of those who fight for justice. Her family's resilience, the investigators' determination, and the community's support ensured that her story would not be forgotten. As Kristen's parents said during her memorial service, "Kristen was a light in our lives, full of dreams, creativity, and kindness. While her time with us was far too short, her impact will endure. Her story has brought people together, inspired change, and reminded us all to cherish those we love." Though the truth has finally been uncovered, Kristen's story continues to resonate. It challenges us to question how we can do better as individuals, communities, and systems in protecting the vulnerable and ensuring that no one's voice is silenced. What do you think? Could more have been done to find Kristen sooner? Was justice fully served in her case, or do questions still remain? Share your thoughts as we reflect on this extraordinary journey for answers and the enduring fight for justice. Kristen Modafferi's story is one that will stay with us, a story of loss, resilience, and the unrelenting pursuit of justice. Her case not only brought closure to her family, but also shed light on the challenges of solving cold cases and the importance of advocacy for missing persons. Yet as we reflect on this extraordinary case, questions remain. Could Kristen's life have been saved if action had been taken sooner? Did the evidence truly reveal the full picture? Or is there more to the story that remains untold? We want to hear from you. What are your thoughts on Kristen's case? Do you believe justice was fully served, or do you think there are still pieces of the puzzle missing? Let us know in the comments below. Your voice adds to the conversation and helps keep cases like Kristen's in the spotlight. If you found this story compelling, don't forget to give this video a like and share it with others who follow true crime cases. And if you haven't already, subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you never miss our next exploration into the mysteries that continue to fascinate and haunt us. Next week, we'll unravel the chilling story of a family of 4 whose home was found eerily abandoned, leaving behind nothing but questions. The case remains unsolved, and the circumstances surrounding their disappearance are as baffling as they are disturbing. You won't want to miss this one. Before you go, check out the video now showing on your screen titled, "She Disappeared Selling Cookies: The Truth That Shook a Community." It's a case that shocked an entire town and left investigators searching for answers in the most unlikely places. Click it now to continue exploring the untold stories behind true crime's most haunting mysteries.